good morning, Maddie. So it's difficult to overstate just how important this IPO is, not just for financial markets, but certainly for the Saudi investor and psychologically, frankly, for the Saudi psyche here. All of this, of course, at the center of Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030. This was expected to move this economy away from a reliance on oil, and the centerpiece of that was getting this Aramco IPO to market, and that happens just a few hours from now. I just want to run you through some of the stats here because they are pretty incredible so far. What we know so far is at least 5 million Saudi individuals, 15% of this population, wanted to get involved in this IPO. That's pretty incredible. Saudi non-Saudi investors, 23% of that institutional tranche. In terms of the allocations, the government institutions here in Saudi Arabia make up about 13.2% of that institutional tranche. The final value, of course, 105.8 billion in terms of the institutional tranche alone. Now, I think it's really interesting to take a look at the breakdown of that in terms of Saudi companies. They make up about 37.5% of that allocation. Domestic asset managers and PE funds, 26.3% of that. And I think that's really interesting when you think about this more broadly in terms of what the government really had to do to get folks to buy in to the proposition of Saudi Aramco. Of course, when we've spoken to ministers in the last couple of days, not just Saudi Arabia's energy minister last week in our first on CNBC interview from Vienna, but also just a couple of nights ago during the release of the Saudi budget, I had the chance, as you know, to speak with the finance minister, and I asked them both to weigh in on what they see as a win in this Aramco IPO. Listen in.
We have seen a demand that is overwhelming, about 5 times oversubscribed. The revenue, as part of the Vision 2030 strategy, the revenue that we are going to get from the IPO would go to PIF to fund PIF investments, a lot of it inside Saudi Arabia to actually diversify the economy, to stimulate the economy, to support the growth and create more jobs. And some of it will go internationally.
I will tell you 2 things. I would be maybe reprimanded for diverging that, but a bright day of my life, I think it's the brightest and proudest day of my life is that when we decided to make this IPO more of family and friends.
There you have it. The energy minister there telling me last week in Vienna, you know, this is something that really constitutes one of the proudest days in my life. That's a man, of course, who has 3 decades of experience in the oil and gas industry, the majority of that with Aramco, with the energy ministry here in Saudi Arabia. But in terms of what happens next, interestingly enough, Maddie, we were mentioning this earlier in the last hour, talking about the potential now for an international listing in Asia. Conversations happening about whether this could be in Japan or in China. That report in the Wall Street Journal is suggesting, at least, that Saudi Arabia isn't going to shy away from trying to get, you know, a better price here, more proceeds. Because at the end of the day, remember, this was about supposedly boosting revenues to the Saudi state. Initially, back in 2016, they hoped they could get as much as 100 billion. That's, of course, been scaled back in light of the local listing to about 25.6 billion. But still, frankly, seemingly a lot of optimism that could be a potential for this Aramco IPO. So we'll just have to wait and watch, Maddie. Hey everybody, it's Hadley Gamble from our new CNBC Middle East Bureau in Abu Dhabi. Thanks for stopping by. Now, to watch more, you can try one of the videos that just popped up on your screen. And don't forget to subscribe.